Recording has just started.
Okay, good. So, Mr. Diarmas, thank you for accepting this interview for highlights. I'm doing a story on life after the COVID, what to expect, what are your thoughts about it, and I'm gonna pull up my questions, and we could start from there.
Okay.
Okay. So, first of all, what I want to say is, what do you think are we going to do after the COVID? What's going to be society's reaction to restart building up the world?
When you ask this, you're saying in like a world, assuming everybody has taken a
Yep,
vaccine and assuming that, I have no fear at
exactly.
all of going
As-
outside
no, assuming that we have a vaccine,
and people have
only a
taken it.
vaccine. No, not people that not people are completely comfortable going back out. But what are your thoughts about having a vaccine moving forward from there?
Okay. I'm not a seer and this has never happened before, so I'm just as confused as anybody. But I think that a problem that this government and many governments are going to face is convincing a sizable portion of the population, I'd say a good 30%,
Uh-huh.
that does not really truly believe in the efficacy of vaccines. For whatever reason, whether it's fake blogs that exist or enemy countries that are trying to wage disinformation campaigns to make us
Mm-hmm.
feel like we can't trust the science, there's definitely going to be a sizable population that is going to be hesitant. So I think in the best case situation, everybody that believes in science, that does want to move past COVID will take a vaccine, assuming the vaccine is one that lasts your lifetime and not just a couple of months,
Yeah.
and that it's gone through all the trials necessary for humans. We can only hope that everybody that is not skeptical about it takes it, and then hopefully with that 70%, we reach what would be called herd immunity, so
Yeah.
that the virus would not be able to spread because so many people have the antibodies or have the vaccine.
Okay. Yeah, I completely understand that. What do you think? There was recent news reports about the Russian vaccine. What are your overall thoughts about that? It hasn't been tested. Are you
It's
skeptic? Do
there's
you?
there's there's around 20 other vaccines around the world that are at the same exact stage as the Russian
Yeah.
one that they're releasing now. It is a policy move by Putin, who
Mm.
is naming the vaccine Sputnik. This is
Yeah.
similar to the space race. They are
Exactly.
trying to have the first vaccine. I believe that the head of their disease control, I don't know what the equivalent of the CDC, I believe that he just stepped down today in
Oh yeah.
in defiance because he doesn't want to have his name on this, because he knows
Hmm.
that there's a serious danger in releasing this to the public
Yeah.
without having proper trials that could take years, to really
Hmm.
see what the long-term longitudinal effects are to these
Yeah.
vaccines. And so I think it's a policy play. Um, and I do think it's kind of like a little mini version of the space race. Russia's
Yeah.
economy is in tatters. It is not even as rich as Italy, one of the
Yeah.
many members of the EU, and they're just
So
trying to get these last ditch,
trying to salvage anything. Yeah.
it's a nationalist play, and it's a very
It's
dangerous.
propaganda, right? Is that what they're trying to say?
It's
We're
I'd say it's not necessarily propaganda, but I'd say it's somewhere there with like trying to get to nationalism, some
yeah. Hmm.
stroke some of that old superpower rivalry.
Yeah. Do you think the world has to come together to cure everybody from the COVID, or should it be more a nationalistic thing where every country cures their own population? Does it have to be an international action, or should it rely on only individual countries taking the responsibility and curing their own people?
I mean, that's a pretty leading question. I think we both know that in a perfect world, we'd hope that everybody was working together
No,
to.
but
But
in Brazil, the president, repeatedly said that the virus is a little
fake,
flu, and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's underestimated it. And do you think Brazilians really want to listen to him and are going to follow his orders if he doesn't want to have the COVID vaccine
So I mean, Brazil's one
diffused
of
in
the
his
worst
country?
case. Brazil's one of the worst cases in the world right now, and there's definitely a high correlation between populist demagogues like Jair Bolsonaro, who you're talking about,
Yeah,
or Putin, or and some would argue our own president, and them trying to deflect that this is not as big a deal as we think it is. It's just like, because
yeah,
obviously
exactly.
it is incredibly politically damaging if you're in power and you're a populist and, you're trying to make Brazil
Yeah,
great again, or you're trying, whatever it is. And then you have this thorn on your side and you'll do and say whatever it takes to make it not real. But
yeah,
unfortunately for the world, a virus doesn't care about your political affiliation. It is an unliving it's an unliving thing that is trying to spread. And so
yeah.
we can fight
Completely understand.
against it all we want to, and we have to work together. The whole world needs to work together.
Okay, yeah,
And I'll say this, the one thing we should all be working together, and this is something you can quote me on, the
yeah,
whole world needs to be getting on top of eliminating wet markets. Wet
yeah.
markets, how this
That's my next
happens.
question.
Okay,
Yeah.
wet markets is how this happens.
Mhm.
Wet markets exist all over South America, all over Western Africa, all over the interior of China, all over Southeast Asia, in places where you have many different species in the same place being sold, sometimes being killed and
Yeah.
used as,
All in the same blood. That's
that's how
the
these
vector for disease.
that's how these new things form.
Mhm.
So all of us should be working together to maybe unite a massive amount of money to pay reparations, whatever,
Because
to countries that have this
exactly.
historically, like China,
I
like East
think
Africa, things like that.
I think it's connected to poverty also because they can't get the high quality meats or animals or whatever they eat. I
Yeah.
think it's connected with them not having enough money and having to go out in the forest and kill wild animals. So
I mean, at one point it was definitely connected. In the case, for example, of China, it
yeah,
was historically because of the cultural evolution, or the Great Famine in the 1960s and 70s.
yeah,
They had to try to make any kind of food that they could because millions died under Mao Zedong because of this famine, and so then it became a staple after they
yeah,
realized these are interesting foods, and then slowly but surely it became a thing that was just popular to eat, and Eastern medicine followed. So now it's a huge industry in China and all over the world. It's in
yeah.
Peru. It's a huge industry too for people
Mhm.
that want to check out these unique markets where you can try all these different foods you wouldn't be able to try anywhere else.
Yeah.
We've got to eliminate that. That's got to be a thing of the past.
Mhm.
And that way we
W-
can really reduce our chances for creating new
Yeah.
COVID 21.
Also, I read that there was a recent study from Vox that analyzed the amount of deforestation that's happening in the world and how humans are going into the land that forests used to occupy. What do you think about that? What
Well,
should
of
be our
course,
solution for that?
as as we continue to interact more and more with species that didn't have contact with us, we are at risk of getting any kind of diseases that we've never
Exactly.
been. It's kind of like
Yeah.
a new plague is always possible if you're
SARS
encountering
came
new
from that,
species.
Ebola, all those
Exactly.
viruses came from forests like that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I mean, these are huge questions, right? I mean, how can you tell a sovereign nation that they should stop a major export of theirs, whether it's lumber or toilet paper or what have you, and that
Yeah.
requires using up their resources. Perhaps we can create some sort of carbon neutral fund in a massive organization like the IMF for the United Nations, where we can begin to, give credit to countries that rely on these things and perhaps fund them so that they have a vested interest in replanting this forest,
hmm
or not, using that, or not continuing or expanding those industries. Because,
Yeah.
and especially in the case, back to Brazil, what you said with Bolsonaro, I mean, his legacy is not going to be the destruction of his people with COVID. His legacy will be his destruction of the world's lungs with the massive
Yeah.
deforestation campaigns
Amazon. Yeah.
happening in the Amazon rainforest. Yeah. So
Yeah. Also, do you think the web markets that you were talking about, they're connected to something cultural, something in history, not only in China, but in other impoverished countries where history showed that it wasn't a new trend and they just kept going, and that's what is currently causing so many. Do you think it's connected to culture, or it's just a matter of not having enough money to pay for proper not wild animals?
I think historically, its origins are the fact that they needed to eat.
Okay, yeah.
And this is what they could depend on. And then eventually, since it was a unique thing, I think eventually
It
within
became a
decades,
staple.
it
Yeah.
it became a staple. It became a cultural thing, and today it's difficult for these entire regions in the interior of China, this entire Amazon rainforest, people that live in Peru and Bolivia that
Yeah.
have these wet markets. For them now, it's become tradition. So what
Hmm.
might have begun as an economic need it's both.
Yeah. Okay. Also, I also read a recent article about how when Italy was suffering a couple months ago and they had plenty of deaths and cases, and they asked for health, more doctors, more medicine to treat their people. Most all countries in the European Union didn't want to help, didn't want to bring their support. Do you think the COVID is driving more intense nationalism in countries? And do you think it could have a negative side effect? Because if people can't unite, if the world can't come together to defend this, where do you think we're going to go?
Um, there's two layers to your question. On the one hand, Italy is a member state of the European Union, which is a very modern, new thing that is not like the federal system that we have here in the United States. Not that our system is obviously any better, given how we have completely screwed this up, and
Yeah,
there
no,
has not
it's
been a
been
federal
ignored.
answer.
It's
Yeah.
brushed aside.
But the Europeans did eventually manage. I don't know what the name is right now off the top of my head, but they did. Within a couple of weeks ago, there was a massive bailout, almost $1 trillion. I want to say it was $800 billion.
Okay, yeah.
And it was a huge first for Europe because they really are significantly more about dealing with their own economic issues in their own countries, and then only do the new members get a lot of help. Like when Romania and Croatia and Poland joined, they got a lot of help with infrastructure, and they had really favorable loans. They pay that back, and their economy grows.
Yeah.
But this is the first time that they've really done a major package for a crisis like this. So I think that Europe is being tested, just like it was being tested with Brexit the past 3 years.
Yeah.
I don't think the European Union is going to dissolve anytime soon.
No.
But on a larger scale, the whole world, it's incredibly complicated, and that's because the global West, and I mean the 40 OECD countries, those that are wealthier the wealthier North compared to the generally more poor global South. They have a history of entering countries, taking resources, taking advantage of continents like South America, Africa, Southeast Asia.
Always.
So these nations are always going to be on guard now that they finally have achieved their independence when the West comes in wanting to help, because the help is going to be on the West's terms. So what does that mean for those that have finally gained their independence? Especially in Africa, to a lesser extent in South America, and in Southeast Asia. So I'm not answering your question. I'm kind of just
I mean, you brought up a good point. And also with America struggling with cases and deaths, do you think history has shown that America used to come and intervene in Europe when there were the world wars? They came in as heroes. Do you think the trend can be switched nowadays? If America is struggling, do you think the European Union can come in and try to give them aid and support?
Well,
they're on a different continent, and
now, I mean, it's a very different world to be utterly destroyed by a war, and then to help with the rebuilding process. You're discussing like the Marshall Plan after World War II. This is a very different scenario in the sense that America, her GDP is falling, and we're definitely suffering a lot, but we're not the only one that's suffering in the whole world. I think that right now, politically, the conservatives that are in power are very much national. They're significantly more nationalist than previous administrations. Like Trump said on his inauguration day, he said America first. So in doing that, he's kind of turned off a lot of his allies, of our historic allies, like Germany, the Japanese, things like that. I don't see, even if there's a reversal and the left comes into power in November and next year, I don't think there's going to be a situation where the Europeans are going to be pouring money and returning anything like that per se. I think a bigger issue here, what you were thinking about, is that America's prestige is taking a massive hit, these past 4 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not necessarily that like anybody's going to come and help us. We still are an incredibly wealthy nation. We have some of the world's best schools for colleges, and we have quite a high GDP per capita. Not as high as Switzerland, but it's pretty high for a country of 300 million. So I don't think we're crumbling, in the next 10 or 20 years.
It's not Great Depression level. That's
Exactly.
what you're telling me, right?
I mean, theoretically, it is great. If you're looking at the economy, it is Great Depression level.
Yeah.
I think a bigger thing we might say, we might say 20, 30 years from now that our lack of leadership here was the straw that broke the camel's back that really pivoted the 21st century more in the hands of Asia, more in the hands of probably what I'm assuming in the future, Singapore, China, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, kind of leading the future in authoritarian style capitalism.
Exactly.
I could see that being the future, and this moment being the shot that killed Franz Ferdinand. This pandemic being the one that kind of ended the Pax Americana of 1950 to 2010. This era when America was the global hegemon, that we ruled the 7 seas, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. So what you're telling me is that this is a turning point, and decades in the future, we're still gonna feel the impacts.
I don't know if it's a turning point. I'm not a seer. I'm saying it could be one. It certainly smells like one, but America fundamentally is still the richest country in the world. Our military is 10 times stronger than the next 5 adversaries combined. We have
just
free political discourse. I mean, there are people that are dying to come into this country. There's a long line of people to get into this country. So people are going to make you believe that this is the end. The gloom is, it's not.
No, but it's
not
too
that
dramatic.
bad.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not that dramatic. It would take a lot to really put us to our knees, but this could be a turning point.
Okay. And last question, where do you see the world in 6 months to a year? Because health experts say that we'll get the virus minimum January and all the way up to the summer, and that's going to be in a full year. So where do you see yourself? Where do you see the world in general in a couple months to a year?
My philosophy in life is expect the worst to be surprised by the best. Okay, I am thinking that I'm trying to prepare my own mindset for a worst case situation where we're not allowed to travel anywhere well into 2021, where people are refusing to get a vaccine that has been tested because of blogs and conspiracy theories. People believe that Bill Gates has superstition. Yes. I'm thinking that whether in 2021 President Trump is in power or President Biden is in power, that there's going to be a sizable population that is incredibly upset about that, and that's going to be its own own problem,
dilemma,
its own dilemma that will lead to more protests on one side, and that will lead to more spread. I think that a lot of service industries are going to be in tatters. I think Miami's economy is incredibly tourist based and service economy based. I think we're going to really feel the hit of the cruise lines getting destroyed.
They lost 30 billion cruises.
So I think that the future looks pretty bleak. Okay, we're not going to sugarcoat anything here.
Yeah.
It's not looking good. You
got to be honest.
We teachers are very lucky to have jobs, and you students are very lucky to be going to college and having something to focus on so that you can see where the world is in 5 years, because humans adapt. We'll eventually adapt to this. It might be a very normal thing for you to have your wallet, keys, phone, mask for the rest of your life, Yeah. So be it, we'll be fine. Yeah. Thank God that this didn't happen in the 80s or the 90s. We have the internet now, we have 4 different consoles. If I want to play a video game, I can play on my computer, my Xbox, my I can play on the Switch, and I can hang out with my friends virtually. There's so many things to be grateful for, given that we're being tested like we haven't been in a whole generation.
Yeah, and a lot of people say that the connected world, increased connections where you can talk with one person from one side of the world to the other. A lot of people are saying it caused the corona. Do you debate it? Do you say that there is some positive to it? Because now people are turning against it, saying that too much interconnectedness drove us to shambles, so to say.
And this interconnectedness is always this is nothing. This did not happen in 2020. The interconnectedness has been going on
Yeah.
for years, and we
No,
both
but
know
it's
what's
the
responsible here
scapegoat.
is wet markets. Yeah, it's a scapegoat. It's wet markets. It's deforestation.
Deforestation, yeah.
It's these issues that can be these can be solved. You know, these problems can be solved. We can absolutely do this. What we shouldn't be doing is pointing fingers. We should not be alienating potential allies. There's no point in calling this the China virus when we need China to help us eliminate
Exactly.
this. So that is only
Yeah.
going to do damage. You know, this is the reality.
Do you think it's more than anything going to be really difficult to change deforestation in wet markets because of money factors for African countries that were previously colonized and don't have the infrastructure and the wealth to start their own economy? If they're based on one specific industry, do you think it's going to be almost impossible for them to change
I think that
without global help?
I don't think it's any cheaper than the global cost of all the assets we've lost in this virus. So however much it costs that we have to pay any country that is the hypothetical countries that have a sizable portion of their GDP devoted to lumber or what have you.
Yeah.
And whatever it takes, whatever dollar they're willing to accept to really crack down on wet markets all across the globe, that number I'm just throwing out there is probably not even 1/100th of how much economically it has cost us all to deal with the virus, whether it's the closure of schools, the brain drain of your little brothers and sisters of not going to school for a whole year, like in person, all the companies that have lost money, you know what I mean? Like that whole thing is not even close.
So if it's feasible, what's stopping us? That's the real question behind everything, because
there is no
politics.
What's stopping us is a lack of there's an uninformed population, and we're divided amongst country lines. We're all humans. I am as much a Chinese person as I am a Thai person, as I am a Senegalese person.
Yeah.
I am behind a border that is a human-made construct. You know, these are very crazy talking points right here. This is some far left nonsense.
Yeah, no.
But you understand what I mean? The truth is that the UN, the World Health Organization, they have very little actual power. You know, the real power resides in G7, the United States, Germany. You know, these countries have a lot more power than institutions that really ought to have more power, that have the name international in them. Because
so it's their responsibility, right? They have to do something or nothing's going to happen.
They have to do something, and then they have to convince France, America, Germany, China, Russia that we as humans would be better off if we all work together on this one.
And that's not going to be easy. So
not going to be easy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mr. Diamas, thank you so much for agreeing to this interview.
How do I send this to you? Do I put it on stream?
I'm not sure. Maybe do you have my email? I think
It's going to be a big file though. Why don't I put it on stream so you can watch it?
Yeah. Okay, that would be great. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to do that now.
Okay. Thank you so much again. It was a pleasure talking to you. And thank you.
Got you. Good luck.
Okay. See you.